possible beyond what we've. It will redefine the roles of humans and machines in the workplace to maximize innovation and creativity. Some call it the fourth industrial revolution. Some call it Industry 4.0. For the nearly 2 billion children in school around the globe, this shift will significantly impact their lives and their roles in the future workforce. These changes hold great promise to help us solve the greatest challenges facing our world. Today's young people will require higher order thinking skills so that they can solve problems in ways never imagined before. Even traditionally hands-on careers will harness the power of technology. These future jobs will demand analytical thinking, ideation and complex problem solving, systems analysis and evaluation, technology design and programming, creativity, innovation. Using technology to access and consume content is no longer sufficient. Students need devices, tools, and training to apply, analyze, and create at the pace of change. Intel's new vision for education embraces skills critical for students' future success and reinvents the role of the PC in the classroom to ensure the next generation has the technologies and tools they need to meet the challenges of a changing world. Intel is working with decision makers and educators worldwide to plan technology adoption that supports higher order skills and maximizes learning outcomes to prepare students for the future. Together, let's empower the next generation of innovators.
Good morning. Welcome to the Women in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Thank you guys for making time to join. Today we've got an action-packed event. Let me just go through the agenda. Firstly, we'll have an overview of the Intel OpenVINO Toolkit, and we will move on to the Women in the Fourth Industrial Revolution panel session hosted by Lebogang Khaitsalwe. And then after that, we will focus on decoding technology and how to deploy IoT solutions hosted by Zoe from Intel. And then after the session from Zoe, we will have a session from one of our sponsors, OfferZen. OfferZen has sponsored the event because they believe that empowering women with technology is important, and they would also like to share some of the State of the Nation report with you to help job seekers find jobs in the tech industry. So thank you so much for making time. My name is Moloti, and I'm here with my co-founder, Tavokwe, a software innovator.
Thank you, everybody, for being present and available today. I hope everybody will enjoy how to see women taking leadership in this heavily tech industry. And let's see from them. And then there's also a later stage where we'll have a practical demo. But this is after 2 p.m. So we'll just start off now with our intro and the scope of what we'll be doing today. And I hope everybody will enjoy the session. Thank you.
It is changing the way we learn, work, and entertain. How we create and communicate. How we interact and play. Data is everywhere, all around us. To handle data's ever-growing volume and complexity requires foundational innovation. With our 6 pillars of technology innovation, Intel is uniquely positioned to deliver the technological solutions needed to harness the exponential power and growth of data, not only by innovating individual technologies, but by enhancing all of them together as one. When coupled with our engineering expertise, the 6 pillars become the world's most advanced foundation of compute, making it possible to move, store, and process data more efficiently and intelligently than ever before. Our 6 pillars put exponential power and performance into the hands of scientists and gamers, climatologists and CTOs, binge watchers and Zoom fanatics, today's students, and tomorrow's game changers. By engineering our foundational technologies to work as one, we are using data to elevate human intelligence to superhuman intelligence. 6 pillars working together to harness the power of data. 6 pillars paving the way to the next era of computing. 6 pillars that bring exascale to everyone.
Wonderful. So let me just give you guys a brief overview of our panel speakers. Lebogang Haitsalwe is the CEO and founder of Botics.ai, an artificial intelligence startup based in Botswana. They recently were accepted to join the Microsoft Artificial Intelligence for Earth program, which focuses on supporting artificial intelligence projects throughout the world that are focused on conservation and helping species to protect them from poachers and such kind. And Botics has really done a good job with helping people in Botswana to protect their animals and all of the elephants that have been poached over the years. This has been a serious problem, and we applaud and salute Botics for the work they're doing. And also, we will have Shandu, who's the CEO of Africa Nova, also an artificial intelligence startup based in Johannesburg. And they've been focusing on a lot of construction, artificial intelligence algorithms, and helping businesses succeed along those lines. And we also have Gege Gacha, who is a data scientist, and she's also an executive director for Africa Business Integration, leading Africa Business Integration's data science operations, and also some of Woolworth's data science operations. So welcome, ladies. And Lebo, you may take the floor.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well on this Sunday morning. Yes, so I think we should start looking at the time. Shandu and Kike, thank you so much for joining me on this panel discussion. I'm so happy to have you, and thanks, Mo, for the introduction. So I would like you to introduce yourself further and the industry or space that you sort of are in. Shandu, if you would like to start.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Shandu Kanyuntai. Like was said before, I'm the CEO and founder of Africa Nova Solutions. We are a data consultancy and disruptive tech solution company. We specialize in different sectors, but right now we are focusing on the construction sector. And yeah, we just operate in the fourth industrial revolution. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Kiki, would you like to just introduce yourself further?
Sure. Morning, everyone. So I'm Gege Gacha, as Mal previously mentioned. So I'm the data science in the African Business Integration company, and yeah, I'm pretty much in the analytical space right now. Thanks, Lebo.
Okay, great. Okay, so as Mal said, I'm also working in the tech space. I have a startup, and basically it's based in Botswana. So as a owner of a startup as well, Shandu, what would you say why would you say it's important for more women to sort of occupy and join this industry?
That's a great question. Just from a technical perspective and in terms of moving forward and making tools and applications and technologies in which are accessible for all, it's important that women are just represented from the start. We need more women to make these technologies that fit and understand the lives of women. But outside of that, I do think that the tech space is a space that is it benefits from collective intelligence, and the more collective intelligence and the diverse type of opinions and experiences that you have, the better that the technology will be. So I think that's one of the important reasons why there should be more women represented in this space.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with the whole collective and partnership, and sort of just creating a space in which individuals can actually all contribute and you can further society. Keke, what do you think sparked your interest in sort of joining this kind of space?
Um, Definitely the love for data and problem solving. I think we can all agree that data has become such a huge commodity in terms of actually solving a lot of problems. And I definitely agree with what you and Shandu sort of highlighted in terms of more representation of more of women in the STEM industry. I think we can all agree that women are very much underrepresented in the space of STEM, and that's hindering our societal and economic progress. For example, I think most of us may know of the story of when airbags, for example, were being introduced into cars, and evidence has shown that women and children were injured disproportionately simply because these kind of objects are designed and tested by men. So, I mean, I don't think it's intentional that we are being excluded as women in these kind of industries, but we're definitely not being well represented enough. So I'm very passionate about projects in terms of actually striving for a world that creates opportunities, equal opportunities for both gender roles, that we actually start having and thinking critically about these fundamentals in terms of building an inclusive world that drives and strives for equality so that we can all be represented in the world that we live in.
I think that was a fantastic answer. I mean, there are just so many biases in this world. And when you think about sort of just including all communities, whether it's LGBT communities, whether it's women, just having an inclusive space to basically improve and further our society, using data, using different products, using different technologies. Yeah, I firmly believe in that. And I don't know how we can curb some of these biases when it is very male dominated and it is very hard to sometimes penetrate. Or maybe there's just a resistance or hesitance sometimes to sort of be fully involved. And I don't know, you, Keke or Shandu, you can both answer this question. I mean, do you think there's enough being done to sort of include women into the tech industry? And if not, like, what kind of assistance would you recommend? Sorry, yeah, Shandu, maybe go first.
Okay. I do think, you know what, I do think in terms of trying to get more women into the space, I think there are a lot of initiatives out there. I mean, there's Guild Code, there's Django Girls, there's a lot of initiatives, there's a lot of fun set up for women and everything. I think, so I do think that a lot is being done, but I just don't think the people understand I think when they see tech or hear the word tech, they just think of so much red tape, and they don't want to take the time to actually get to know and understand things. So I think it's more of just like, I opening up the space where it's more welcoming and it's more palatable for women to join, to encourage them more. But I do think that we are on the way of including more women, which is very inspiring to see. But we just have a lot of work to do, and to make the space more inclusive, as inclusive as we can, and less intimidating.
I agree. I mean, I fully agree. Like, as somebody who hasn't sort of been in the tech space, I mean, I sort of have a law background, and entering a tech space was kind of foreign to me. There was a lot of learning, there was a lot of sort of understanding I needed to do, and just sort of breaking down those kind of barriers and red tape that I thought was there and maybe wasn't necessarily there. It was just sort of me not understanding and me finding certain technical words um, difficult for me to sort of enter a conversation. It was very intimidating in the beginning, I will say. So I definitely do agree with you that it is sort of a mindset that you might have in the beginning of sort of thinking things are just a bit too strange, too foreign, there's too much red tape. And then you realize it's actually just about you doing the learning and doing the work and getting involved, like you said, in all spheres. Keke, do you have anything you'd like to say in terms of what you think could be done to help women sort of enter the space easier?
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you on that in terms of there has been a lot of great initiatives to sort of include women in these industries and sort of fill that gender gap in the space. But I also do agree that there is still a lot to be done in the space. But I'm pretty much optimistic in terms of not the speed and the way in which we're going about this with the initiatives that keep coming up. I think it's important to continue to have these conversations and to actually encourage one another in our various communities and engage. It's very important to engage with both men and women to actually actively include more women into these decision-making spaces so that their voices can also be heard. So I think it's a collaborative effort, and I'm optimistic that we'll get there eventually.
No, I agree, definitely. A lot of work does need to be done, and I do think like we are on the right path. It's just for sort of everyone to have the opportunity to sort of enter the space, which is very limited right now. But Shandu, I wanted to ask you if you'd want to tell us a bit more about Africa Nova and, you know, possibly where you see the future of Africa.
Okay, great question. So Africa Nova, it was kind of just to give you the backstory a bit, it was just kind of birthed from like my love of tech and understanding tech and all the possibilities that lie with tech. I think like once you understand AI, you know, and all those other disruptive technologies, you understand the possibilities, and that's the most important part about any tech. You need to understand the possibilities and the impact and the real life impact that it might have. And I think that's what truly did encourage me to kind of start the company and everything in terms of what we actually do. So we do a lot of data consultancy and disruptive tech solution type of innovation. That's the type of innovation that we plan to, you know, go forward with in the future. And what do I see for the future of Africa Nova? I definitely see us kind of just solidifying ourselves as a tech solution company that utilizes a lot of disruptive technologies, you know, to the same scales that you see that are found in, you know, the Americas and the UKs, etc., etc. So really utilizing those technologies, because we do have a lot of tech talent here in South Africa, but it's only a small like percentage who are actually using these disruptive technologies. So definitely solidifying our space as a company that utilizes those disruptive technologies.
Okay. No, I think I really enjoyed the fact that you mentioned disruptive technologies, and I sort of wanted to go further into that. I think both you and Keke can speak about it, but which kind of disruptive technologies do you think are sort of relevant in the African space and context?
The biggest one right now is artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence has many subcategories to it. So that's machine learning, etc., etc. But yeah, I think the biggest one is AI, and I think the biggest hindrance right now in terms of really getting the most value is data. Africa doesn't have a lot of data. I mean, even if you just think of it from a language perspective, we can't train chatbots in different languages because the data doesn't exist. So a lot of efforts needs to be put into getting the data and everything we need in order to build these disruptive AI disruptive technologies and all this kind of stuff. Then we can go and look into other things like but that's why I like also IoT. IoT fits in nicely because it needs data. So yeah, I hope I answered that question and I made sense.
No, you definitely did. You definitely did. I agree. Kike, do you want to say anything regarding that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that also. And one thing I also wanted to add on is definitely, I mean, in Africa specifically, in order to sort of also educate across the youth in terms of like um, other, I mean, you mentioned AI, but I'm thinking also along the lines of voice recognition, to have that incorporated into our own languages is also something to look at, obviously in the future as well.
No, I hear you. Um, so basically, I think just maybe looking at your younger self starting out in a field like this, what were maybe one of your biggest challenges? I know personally, because starting out with no real tech background or knowledge, I did have a huge sort of imposter syndrome where I would just feel like maybe I'm just thinking of ideas and I'm actually not moving anywhere and, I'm not going to succeed. And, it was only until really we got onto the Microsoft AI for Earth program where I felt like, okay, no, things are kind of moving. Like there is some sort of recognition and we are actually doing something. This product does have benefits, and it is something that could be deployed into a real world context. So sorry, I said a lot there, but what advice would you give yourself starting out, basically? Sorry, Shandu, you could start, please.
No problem. I definitely can relate with the whole imposter syndrome. And to be very honest, sometimes I do feel it a lot. Even though I've kind of progressed with the company, but what I would tell my younger self is just to keep going, just keep learning, just keep going, and it will come together at some point. But just keep going. You are going to feel imposter syndromes. You're going to walk into hackathons and be the only female there. You're going to walk into boardrooms or talk to people or get into programs and there'll only be 2 women there. And you literally feel like you're in a frat house. But but you just need to keep going and just remember why you're there. And that's the biggest advice I can give.
Definitely. Kike, what were sort of your biggest challenges and, similarly, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I think some of my challenges definitely, um, being in hackathons and having that lack of skill in coding, for example. But I definitely share the sentiment Shandu shared, that you need to keep on going. If you have a curious mind, it's great. Always be curious to learn. There's always room to learn, and everywhere you go, there's someone who knows something that you don't know, and that's okay. But if you've got the willingness to keep on going and learning and growing, progress is better than nothing. So that's something that I keep continuously applying to my mind as well till today. So that's the kind of advice I'd also give to someone, that keep on going, keep on pushing, keep on believing, and every little step that you make actually moves you into a direction that you were not in yesterday. So it's progress either way.
No, I completely agree as well. I think just looking at all the barriers that do exist, you do have to keep pushing. And just in terms of, even funding or, it can be, especially if you're starting up, well, in a startup, it can be very capital intensive. They can be, a lot of barriers in funding. And I think, Shandu, what would you sort of give advice to women struggling with those kind of complications of just starting up in terms of even just a capital sense?
Yeah. I really think it's extreme. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's not difficult. Especially like if you compare the type of funding structures and funding opportunities between here and the US. For example, in the US and in Europe and all that, they have a lot of funds available for women. And as opposed to here in Africa where there's not a lot, it is difficult. But you have to just keep pushing and kind of looking for those clients. And yeah, there's not really much you can do, but yeah, but funding uh is a journey. And I think that you and your company, when you go look for funding, just understand and respect the fact that it is a journey and it's not going to happen overnight and it takes time. And once you go in with that type of mindset, you should be fine.
No, I hear you. I think, yeah, like you said, it is a journey, and I think even with any business, starting up, capital usually is going to be one of the biggest struggles, and it is something that you have to navigate around and just keep pushing and look at different avenues. And nothing really is set in stone. Sometimes it really is luck that can just kickstart your business. Keke, I think I'm just gonna end off with one last question because we are gonna have a Q&A just for about 10, 15 minutes. But what advice would you maybe give younger girls who maybe are still studying, maybe still on varsity and, aspire to be in a tech space?
Sure. I think one advice I'd give to younger girls that are still studying and want to fit in the tech space is to definitely research the space as well. And there's so many platforms now that you can engage in, initiatives that you can engage in. Always be proactive. Put yourself in rooms even though they're uncomfortable. So that's the kind of advice that I would give to younger girls and men wanting to enter the tech space that are studying right now, is to look beyond just your studies and actually put yourself in rooms, and take on vacation works and just apply your mind in terms of what you're studying as well. I think that's very important, especially looking at the unemployment rate. And in the country right now, it's very concerning. Yeah, it's extremely very concerning. So I think we should be more proactive in terms of where we want to be, where we see ourselves, have these conversations, network more as much as we can, and that's literally by putting yourself out there more. So that's one advice that I'll give to our younger generation that are still studying and want to enter and have a footprint into the space.
Yeah, I think that's good advice as well. I think you guys have been so lovely. Like, thank you so much for your opinions and your conversation based on your own experiences. And I think you guys are doing lovely so far. And I wish like the best for your endeavors, your projects, your businesses. And it was great having you guys. I think we can move on to a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, feel free to sort of unmute yourself and ask. I don't think there are going to be a lot of questions because we did cover a lot of different topics and yeah. Hi, Stella.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Stella Voma from the University of Johannesburg. I'm the HOD in the Applied Information Systems. So thank you very much to the panelists for sharing their insight. I felt I shouldn't keep quiet because women don't normally keep quiet. But I just want to make a comment based on what the panel has shared. And mine is not really a question. It's in terms of breaking the barriers. They spoke about the biasness in the space, the inferiority of the masculine, of the other gender. But I think for me, it's about collaboration, having us as women collaborating. I had a comment about doing research, just understanding what's happening in the space. I don't take pride in saying that I'm the first Black female to head a department of IT. I think it's a pathetic statement given the time and the era that we live in, but that's the reality of what's happening. But I also want to open up in terms of collaboration to say, please, people feel free to contact us as universities, because when you mention the issues of gender, it's the reality that we live in, and academia cannot be left out from the issues that's happening in the industry. Because remember, I always take the claim and say, we're the ones who feed the industry, we're the ones who produce these graduates. And I see it more in real life when we host the hackathons, where you'll have fewer women, participating in those spaces. And I always say that I get, I don't know whether to call it a bad feeling or bad vibes, but that's the best name I can think of now. When you find that you host hackathons, and although we have broken, the entrance of having women in various spaces and corners of our country, and I'm speaking of South Africa, in terms of their historical background coming into the system. But we're failing to retain the women in the system, and I'm talking about the university system, and mainly because of those kind of challenges, because as an institution, you don't have the full support, maybe to attend specifically to women. So I think for me was to say women must also stretch out when they tap into the spaces. And when they are given the opportunities, those that know me in the space, they know that I'm intentional with women, and I don't apologize for it. And I think as women, those imposter syndromes, we need to break them. We need to be radical about them and say, what do we do? What is your role? What is the impact? How do we measure that impact to show that we have made that difference? Because talking about it, I always say in August, we feel like some kind of porn stars where we have to come in and talk about women. We are doing this. It's a status quo. We talk about the usual. But what do we do to break that? How are we stretching out? And I think for that, I'm just sharing to say my email is open. Please keep in touch. If we want to break this, we have to be very practical. We have to talk about what do we need to do to break the status quo. You can tell that I get paid to talk, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Great conversation. I really loved it, and keep it going, everybody and the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. I mean, it's really things like this that help break those barriers and help create that collaborative partnership that you were speaking about. I think I thoroughly agree, and I think we can all agree that we do need to start stepping up in terms of a radical sense, because we can't continue just having conversations and parading and waving flags. There does need to be some action, and we do need to take steps forward in action. So I thoroughly enjoyed your comment. Thank you so much. There's also a comment in the messages that fully agrees and says that there needs to be some sort of effort from schools or universities in the workspace to encourage women more into their tech careers. But thank you so much. Keke, there is a question for you in the messages section as well. It says, which best algorithms would you advise for beginners to look at when they're starting their journey of data science?
In terms of algorithms, I think it's very much dependent on, what you definitely working on, or the problem that you're trying to resolve itself. I mean, I'm in the more statistical space, so very much in different kinds of machine learnings cater to different kind of problems. So it's a broad question. But I do think it's important to learn the basics of coding in general. Definitely makes it easier to tap into coding and understanding the gist of coding. Yeah, I hope I sort of clarified a bit, even though I think I didn't answer that well enough. Okay, cool.
Okay, Muloti, would you like to take over? If there are no more questions or comments, feel free to type, guys. You don't have to sort of speak if you don't want to.
Yes.
I just also wanted to add, in terms of tech careers, I think another thing that also must be kind of also encouraged and highlighted, is also the earning potential of these roles. I don't think it's something that we talk about enough. Tech does, especially like if you come from, as a person who comes from a different background and you learn to code and become a software developer, the earning potential and economic potential is extremely high. So, and I think that's another factor that should be used and spoken about, for women to, the tech does have the possibility to change your economic status in a positive way. So, and I don't think we should shy away from that fact, that it is such a huge fact. And also another thing that can be used to, encourage more women to participate in this space, besides the economic advantage, is that it's a high in demand skill set, and that demand is increasing. So why don't take advantage of that demand and cater to it? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that comment. I do agree.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies. I think you guys inspired us, for her comments and additions. We really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. OfferZen has sponsored free giveaways for everybody who's attending the Women in Fourth Industrial Revolution. So please feel free to fill out the form and get your nice swag from OfferZen. This includes sweaters, t-shirts, and stuff, just to say thank you for coming to the event. And I would like to thank OfferZen for this opportunity. They will share more details about the state of the nation of developers in South Africa in a few minutes. So yeah, I think now we could go on to Zoe's introduction of how AI can improve multiple industries. Zoe is the product leader at Intel IoT. Okay.
AI beyond vision is changing industry. From conversational AI to acoustic event detection to recommendation engine, audio and language in AI inferencing is rapidly changing the dynamics of a range of solutions, including customer personalization and multimodal analytics. The Intel distribution of OpenVINO enables end-to-end capabilities for accelerating and optimizing workloads beyond computer vision, including audio, speech, and recommendations. Today, we'll be diving into a variety of use cases and providing in-depth insights for optimizing your solutions. The outline a solution architecture for enabling audio for contactless applications. The key building blocks start off with audio pre-processing. The pre-processing can be done in software running on Intel CPU or separately on a discrete unit using an MCU or DSP. The next block is the automatic speech recognition or ASR functionality, which has submodules like feature extraction and acoustic models to classify words, and can also include a preliminary language model to help support speech-to-text conversion for voice commands. While IoT, audio, and language inferencing deploy very widely, the pre-processing and ASR workloads can run on a client device like an interactive kiosk, while the natural language processing or NLP module can run on an edge device or cloud. To minimize latency and in cases where privacy is a concern, NLP processing at the edge is normally preferred closer to the device. Intel has several key components to enable these capabilities, and the Intel distribution of OpenVINO Toolkit provides the inference platform with support. Even with the extent of new opportunities and breakthroughs that deep learning enables, it is not without challenges. Deploying deep learning networks from training environments to real-world production use cases has been challenging, as there is a significant gap in performance and accuracy seen in trained models compared to what gets deployed in the field. With regard to integration, there is a disconnect in the end-to-end development workflow from training typically occurring in the data center to embedded platforms optimized for performance and power consumption. There are diverse requirements for a myriad of use cases that require unique approaches. The Intel distribution of OpenVINO Toolkit packages a host of tools and optimized functions enabling high-performance deep learning inference deployment from edge to cloud. We recently announced support for version 2.0 of the Intel Gaussian and Neural Accelerator, or GNA, a high-throughput, low-power coprocessor enabled on Tiger Lake for audio pre-processing tasks like echo cancellation and dynamic noise suppression, as well as speech workload acceleration. GNA 2.0 on Tiger Lake delivers performance improvements and more available memory. The latest OpenVINO release includes new pre-trained models and supported public models that enable state-of-the-art accuracy with BERT transform model support, NLP question and answer, topic analysis, and more. Bridges human-machine translation with enables ASR and end-to-end speech processing with Mozilla Deep Speech, and delivers scalable deep learning-based audio event detection with ACL. In addition, there are code samples and demos providing support for an array of use cases. The OpenVINO DL streamer configures end-to-end operations, provide across multiple The Intel Desktop Edge provides global instant access to latest software Intel offers applications. For AI developers building audio and mobile solutions and developer ease of use challenges. Now, let's hear from Nile, who will walk us through the DL streamer and media analytics pipeline capabilities enabling combined video and audio.
Thanks, Julie and Joey, for that introduction and setting the stage. Next up, as Julie mentioned, we're going to show you how to build an audio event detection pipeline using OpenVINO, an ACL net model, and DL streamer. But before I get right into code samples, let's start with giving a background into what DL streamer is. So DL streamer is a component of the OpenVINO toolkit, that focuses on building optimized media analytics pipelines. These pipelines, once created, can be deployed easily either at the edge on smaller devices or in the cloud on server class devices. Pipelines, in addition, are providing optimized processing across all the different types of Intel's hardware, leverages the industry standard GStreamer framework. It's community-driven and industry supported. And we'll spend a little bit more time talking a little bit about what GStreamer is in the following. Media processing. It's an open source project with a strong community of developers. It shines in providing overall pipeline management, including threading, modular pluggable API, and a number of standard processing elements, such as queues, branches, decoders, and the like. It has a huge ecosystem with over 250 plugins and more than 1,000 elements, elements being the fundamental processing building block. And it's easy to extend with many language bindings, including Python, C, and Rust. Generally speaking, pipelines go from a source through a set of filters or transformations to a sink or destination. And GStreamer handles the bulk of the processing and the connections between elements that's required for that. So stepping forward, what is DLStreamer? So DLStreamer is a set of open source elements for optimized inference, including object detection, classification, and tracking based on OpenVINO. We're able to leverage the GStreamer media elements and OpenVINO to give portability across different Intel architectures without sacrificing performance. At the end of the day, DLStreamer is a perfect marriage of GStreamer, which provides cross-platform media optimization, and OpenVINO, which provides the same for inference. So what does a typical video analytics pipeline look like? Well, you start with camera sources. You can imagine IP-enabled RTSP cameras. The first stage of a video analytics pipeline will be decoding the incoming stream into a sequence of frames, then pre-processing those frames to meet the demands of the model. So in this case, you often have to do scaling, resizing the image, as well as color space conversion to make it prepared for the inference models. The next stage, you actually do deep learning inference. This is where you take the model and do your actual detection, classification, or tracking based on the incoming frames. The final stage of the pipeline is where you publish into the application for further processing. So that's, again, a typical video analytics pipeline, which is actually relatively easy to do with GStreamer. So if we go through GStreamer, you can see it has a handy application called GST Launch, which allows you to prototype fairly complicated pipelines, all without any lines of code. We'll start out with the file source element, which brings in the video file. Next, we have the decoder, the GBA detect element. This is the actual element from DLStreamer, which provides OpenVINO-based inference. You'll also see that we don't have any color space conversion or scaling. And in this case, GBA detect element handles that for optimization reasons. So the incoming frames get scaled and transformed automatically into what is required for the model. Next up, we have object classification. So based upon the regions that have been identified in the original frame and what objects are there, you can provide a secondary classification to do final attributes over the existing regions that you've already identified in the object detection. In this case, we're doing 3 of those. And finally, we'll watermark the image and then display it so you can see and debug the pipeline. But today is all about going beyond video analytics. And in this case, what we're talking about is how to combine audio event detection and object detection to get a fuller sense of what is happening in a scene. In particular, we'll be using the ACNL model. Now, the ACNL model, as provided in the Open Model Zoo, it's a new approach to doing sound classification based on neural networks. Whereas traditional sound classification relies on features from the frequency domain, such as substrate coefficients and Fourier transforms, ACNL relies on convolutional neural networks in a similar way to video analytics, and is able to learn features directly from raw audio samples. Here's a typical topology showing how we move from raw samples through multiple convolutional layers to arrive at the final classification. Now, as we move forward into video and analytics pipelines, you can see that we can transform an incoming combined video and audio stream into two separate branches. The top branch here will be doing audio decoding, conversion, and then inferencing to define what kind of audio events we see in the incoming stream. And in the second bottom pipeline, at the same time in parallel, we'll also be doing object detection through the video frames. And the nice thing about GStreamer is it allows you to easily break apart an incoming stream into two separate streams and then actually combine the results back together. We see this through GStreamer. It makes it very simple. Again, we'll start with the GST launch application. You take an incoming file source, do a decoding. In this case, split it, again, as I mentioned, into two separate streams, GBA detect, doing the object detection and watermarking. And in the second branch, doing the audio conversion and then audio detection using the ACLNet model. All right, folks, now it's showtime. It's my favorite part of the presentation where I get to actually demonstrate all the things that I've been talking about and show you just how simple it is to use DLStreamer to do relatively complicated things. So let's get started. We'll start with just video analytics, and then we'll build up into audio. Well, we'll start with the simple GST launch string. So nothing up my sleeves yet. We'll use a file source element, pick a local file. In this case, one that will make sense for face detection. Next, we'll add the decoder. And then we move into the actual DLStreamer elements. First, we'll do detection. GBA detect, and we'll just give it the face detection model. And in this case, you need to give it the actual XML file, as well as the post-processing instructions. Alrighty. Next, we're going to add in the classification. In this case, we're going to do emotions recognition. So similar pattern here. Just as before, we have to use the model proc. Finally, we get into the post-processing and the watermarking. So now that we've done the detection and the classification, we want to see the results. So we use GBA watermark to do that. Then we want to encode the stream so we can restream it. So we use video convert, X2, 64 encode with some presets. Then we add an MPEG container to it. And finally, we go ahead and stream it out. All right. If all goes well, this will now start a detection on a video and restream the results out so that we can see them on the screen. All right, looks like it's there. This is one of my favorite videos ever to watch. I just like how serious these two people take this. You can see now that they're happy. You're going to see them go through different emotions. They never break character. It's really amazing. Always excited and happy to see this. Could be anger, sad, and then go back to neutral. Okay, so that's video analytics. I promised you to go beyond video analytics and to do audio analytics. And so here, the next phase, we're going to go beyond what I just showed you and do some real magic about doing video detection, object detection, and audio event detection at the same time in a single pipeline. It's really pretty cool. So let me show you what that pipeline looks like. Now this pipeline, I'm not going to actually type out in front of you. It's just a little bit too long, but I will describe it for you. So what we've got at the beginning is the same as what we saw before. We've got a GSD launch string. We have a file source. In this case, we'll be doing a video that actually has audio as well. Same decode bin. The next step is where things get a little bit different, where the decoder actually outputs two streams. One for video and one for audio. So you can see the first stream here. It's going into our standard GVA detect, in this case using object detection model. A little bit of magic here going on in terms of we then use a custom element called GVA Python to intercept the frames and then put upon the frames any audio events that we detect. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a second. Next thing we'll do is GVA watermark again to see the results and finally stream it out just as before. Now here's where the audio part comes in. So the decoder, as I mentioned, has two streams coming out of it. The second part we insert into a queue and then do the audio part. So in this case we're doing a resample audio conversion, mixing, and then we get into the GVA audio detect. Just like for video detect, in this case we're doing our audio event detection. Okay. At the end of that, we're actually going to go through meta-convert and meta-publish and publish the results to a file. Now this is where the Python element comes back in. So the results of the audio event detection will be published to a FIFO. The Python element will read from that same FIFO, and for every frame that there is an audio event on, it's going to place a new watermark object onto the stream. Detecting not only the video object, but also the audio event. Okay? After that, we're going to do the same thing in terms of encoding the stream. So we got the audio convert, then an encoder, and then a mux. All right, enough talking. Let's see something. Okay, same thing as before. Now we're going to see the stream. I'm going to go ahead and resize this so you can see it a little bit better. You've got a dog. I've seen it visually, but let's see if we can actually detect when it starts to bark. Oh, there we go. And now you can see clearly every time it barks, you see an event come across the screen indicating as well. Now he's a very friendly dog. He is very loud though. Now you may be wondering, okay, Mile, I've seen dogs, I've seen people. What about other animals? Can you do other animals? I mean, is that really something you can do? Well, let me show you just that I can do that as well. So next up, we'll just swap out the video just so you can see that there's nothing up my sleeve. I didn't pre-record that or put that in place. And we'll start now with the cat. Okay, let me go. Okay. Swapping out the file, going to the end. Now, we'll see what that looks like. And you get to see the cat. And the cat, obviously, what does the cat say? It meows. Also a very loud cat, but also very friendly. Okay. So now that's the end, essentially, of this first demo, for Act 1. But I leave you with one question. It'll become more apparent why I'm asking this question later. But let me stop with, how do you make pad thai? And how much salt is in pad thai?
Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope that you guys learned from the G streamer.
Enjoyed that.
Just a quick one. Do you guys have any questions regarding the GStreamer or the OpenVINO toolkit? I know that Zoe and his fellow technical partners spoke a lot about the GStreamer and how they're adding audio into video processing pipelines. We really think that's cool, and we think that it will really help businesses to solve critical problems in the future. And yeah, but do you guys have any questions regarding that? Okay, that's all right. So without any further ado, we're going to go forward and allow Talia from OfferZen, who's going to give us some insights about what developers are doing in South Africa and the landscape of developers throughout South Africa. You know, she shared a couple of information with us previously, and let's go ahead and see what OfferZen has to offer. Hi, Talia. Hope you're well.
Hey, super good. Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Welcome. So I'll just pop up your presentation and then you can start.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. So today I'm going to be sharing key insights from a survey of over 3,500 South African developers. And this is OfferZen's State of the Dev Nation Report 2021. So this topic is important because, as we know and have discussed at length, women in tech are historically underrepresented. And we know that representation matters, of course, because we want to try and reduce bias, for example, within AI and machine learning algorithms, but also because it's important to include diverse viewpoints and perspectives. Finally, women are, of course, consumers of tech, so it's important to create tech products designed by women for women. So companies need to be more intentional about hiring women, particularly from underrepresented groups, but also women in tech need to show up for one another. And this is what this talk is about. As a woman in the tech industry, I am so excited to be here today to share insights from our community with you. So before we unpack that, sorry, Maloti, just the previous slide, if you don't mind. Thank you. The one before that with my face. Thank you. Cool. So before we unpack that, I just want to give some background on myself and OfferZen. So I'm a graduate in organizational psychology, and I started my journey as a young professional working as a talent advisor at OfferZen. My job is to assist candidates with owning their job search so that they can find their dream job. I love working as a tech talent advisor, where I get to combine my interest in tech with my passion for empowering others, especially women. Cool. So at the outset, I also want to explain the purpose of the State of the Dev Nation report in relation to OfferZen's company mission. So our mission is to help developers grow in their careers, specifically by unlocking potential, both in individuals by helping them find their dream job. And by this, I don't just mean any job, but the right job, but also to unlock potential as a collective by fostering a robust developer community in South Africa. As a business, we do many things to help developers grow in their careers. These are all rooted in the belief that the value we create is not in our product, but in our community. So here are just a few of some of the most important things that we do. So first and foremost, we help developers to find jobs at companies they didn't even know existed, where they can grow and have an impact. We also have a mentoring program where we pair junior developers with senior developers to encourage knowledge exchange within the community. In addition to that, we are very passionate about creating content for developers by developers. We have a host of articles, blogs, podcasts, and newsletters created by members of our community that you can learn from. We also host Make Days, which are fun events where you can learn new tech and hang out and network with other developers. And finally, and most pertinently to the purpose of this presentation, we advocate for transparency on industry data that empowers developers to stay informed. This is the purpose of this talk, which is to share insights from data we collected so that you can make more informed decisions about your career. With that in mind, I'm now keen to jump in, starting with today's agenda. So I'm going to start by chatting a little bit about education and how it impacts developers' career prospects. I'll then move on to a chat about skills and learning and what's trending and how developers are thinking about learning within their careers. And this will be followed by chatting a little bit more about how developers are thinking about their careers in general, what motivates them at work, and what's important to them in the job market. All of this should hopefully help to paint a clearer picture of the South African developer community. Next slide, please. So, starting with education, candidates often ask me, how important is having a degree or higher education for my career prospects? Well, a key finding, as evidenced by this graph, was that 1/5 of developers do not have a university degree. Next slide, please. In terms of how this relates to career prospects, we found that devs without degrees can match the earnings of their degreed peers later on in their careers. So while education has an impact on earning potential early on in a dev's career, the gap between earning potential for devs with and without degrees narrows over time. With the information era, there are so many different and valid ways to acquire knowledge, especially as a developer, where you can become incredibly skilled through self-learning alone. For me, the deeper and exciting insight from this data is that a degree is not a make or break for career progression in the tech industry. Another key finding was that over 50% of developers code as a hobby. This tells us that for many developers, coding is much more than just a means to an end. Rather, it is a passion that is meaningful and fulfilling to them. This passion is often what companies look for during their hiring process. They want to see a demonstration of a candidate's commitment to their craft through personal projects and continuous self-directed learning, so that they can ensure they are hiring someone who truly loves what they do. So, to recap, a dev's education is what they make of it, and a degree is not the be-all and end-all of your career prospects. Salaries rise with career progression, and devs are committed to their craft and love what they do. So what do we take away from this? This quote from my colleague Shara summarizes quite well what you can do with this information. So according to Shara, a solid GitHub repository with independent projects shows companies your skills, your willingness to work with new tech, and that this is more than just a job for you. Moving on to industries, skills, and technologies, our key finding from the survey is that the future is data. So when asked what they consider to be the most exciting industries, it was found that devs think that AI and cloud computing is the most promising industry right now. This is followed by fintech, and then cybersecurity and robotics in third and fourth place, respectively. I want to also just take a second here to distinguish between fintech and traditional banking. So when we say fintech, we don't mean like a Capitec or an FNB. What we mean is a company that infuses a financial service with tech in a way that's innovative and forward-thinking. A great example of this is our partner company, Luno. They embody the startup mindset and culture while working closely with cryptocurrency. This emphasis on innovative and high-impact industries tells us that devs are keen to work on projects that impact people's everyday lives. So when asked about the most desired languages, it was found that Python is the language most of surveyed developers want to work with next, followed by TypeScript and JavaScript. Python has gained popularity as a backend language. Sorry, the previous slide, please. Thank you. Cool. Python has gained popularity as a backend language, which makes sense given its association with data science and data analysis. JavaScript, originally a front-end language, has gained popularity with the addition of Node.js, which is a backend JavaScript framework. According to a blog from General Assembly, JavaScript's popularity has dramatically increased because Node.js represents the idea of a JavaScript everywhere paradigm, unifying all of web application development around a single programming language. So becoming proficient in JavaScript is an opportunity to upskill as a full-stack developer while working with incredibly marketable tech. In terms of the most used languages, the previous slide, thank you. So in terms of the most used languages, JavaScript is the most widely used programming language because of it leaning so easily into full stack development. SQL comes in second place, indicating that data work has become an important part of many developer roles. This means that backend devs are likely undertaking data work as part of their roles, increasingly commonly. C# rounds out the top three. It's an important element of the Microsoft .NET stack, which we refer to as an evergreen tech stack because it's always in demand. So C# is a great foundational language to learn. Now, with regards to the most used frameworks, .NET frameworks such as .NET Core and ASP.NET were found to be the most used at the moment, which aligns with C# being one of the most used languages right now. This demonstrates the high demand for .NET developers in South Africa. We also found that that JavaScript-based frameworks, including React, Node.js, and Angular, were just behind .NET technologies in popularity and use. And this makes sense when you consider that JavaScript is the most used language right now. With regards to the most desired frameworks, what you can see and what's interesting to note is that the order is actually flipped, with JavaScript-based technologies taking the forefront, with .NET technologies just behind. So what this indicates is that while .NET is currently the most used, it's still considered less desirable than JavaScript-based technologies. And interestingly, React is in first place, which is likely due to its extra simplicity and flexibility, which makes it a super desirable framework for web development. Next slide, please. So, how often do developers tend to learn new languages? The majority of devs learn a new language annually, with many learning a new language as often as every few months. This demonstrates a consistent commitment to keeping their skills sharp. This trend is super high across all levels of seniority. So the stereotype is that the more senior you become, the more set in your ways of working you become. But this does not seem to be the case for senior developers in the tech industry. This trend of consistently learning new tech is also much higher than what's been observed in other professions. And this continuous upskilling mindset is valued by companies. In a hiring process, the willingness to learn is often seen as just as important as what you already know. So on the next slide, to recap, JavaScript is the most popular language right now, and devs are keen to work with Python next. Devs are committed to keeping their skills sharp in order to stay relevant in an unpredictable and constantly evolving industry too. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Deeper insights, as summarized by my colleague Mikhail, are upskilling in skills gaining industry traction goes a long way in demonstrating a developer's commitment to coding and their understanding of the tech landscape. So what can you do with this information? It's important, especially at the start of your career, but also on a consistent basis, to consider what you are best at, what tech you enjoy working with, and whether your skills and tech stack is and will remain marketable in the future. The previous slide. Marketability of tech is especially important if salary growth is important to you. Relative to other industries, salaries in the tech industry can actually increase quite drastically over a short period of time if you invest in mastering scarce or in-demand tech. And getting into this continuous growth and learning mindset will enable you to become more adaptable. The more frequently you learn new things, the easier it will be to learn the next time. So next, I want to share some key findings on what's important to South African developers within their careers. Almost every single candidate I have ever spoken to has emphasized a lack of career growth or a sense of stagnancy in their jobs as a main reason for leaving. This is corroborated by our survey, which found that growth and learning is the #1 reason devs choose to stay in their current role. This is followed by work-life balance, a good company culture, and liking the people you work with. Interestingly, current salary and salary potential are the least important factors explaining why devs stay in their current role. This tells us that this is more than just a job for developers. They want to be challenged and work with cool tech. This also tells us that devs have a growth mindset and seek out opportunities that promote their career growth. Cool. In terms of what developers want for their career growth, #1 is challenging projects using the latest tech, which is the second most important factor. Interestingly, mentors and coaching is third most important. This tells us that it's not enough to just work with cool tech and challenges. Devs want adequate support through mentorship too. And this is something I've seen from my own experience chatting with candidates, often even very experienced ones, who choose to leave their current role because they are the most senior developer on their team and are dissatisfied with not being able to learn from equally or more experienced peers. Next slide, please. Cool. Another interesting finding is on the next slide. Thanks. Another interesting finding is that 1/3 of developers aren't super confident about their current career growth. As someone who works closely with developers at the brink of a career transition, this makes total sense. It's normal and even common to question your career progression. But my perspective is that it's a fine balancing act between appreciating the opportunity you have right now and grafting hard to gain valuable experience from it, while also recognizing and acting quickly when you know you're not being supported to upskill in the way you want to. So to recap, challenging projects are key to career growth. Devs are always looking to explore new opportunities, and growth and learning opportunities are the #1 reason that devs stay in their roles, and this is tied to adequate mentorship. Cool. So what can we take away from this? My colleague Saman's advice is to dig deep. Every candidate needs to be doing extensive research on the opportunities that cross their paths. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Often candidates are afraid to ask certain questions in the interview process, but it's so important for candidates to interview a company when they're being interviewed. To do this, prepare for your interviews through extensive research and ask questions that will give you insights into the factors that are important to you. For me, it's vital to make sure you are assessing any given career opportunity holistically. Although it's not always easy, it's important to resist being swayed by just 1 or 2 factors, like a great tech stack or awesome culture. If you are wanting to grow within this job, you need to feel sure that not only are all the most important factors present, but that you'll be supported to learn and improve through excellent training and mentorship. As a final thought, I just want to emphasize that, ladies, you are so valuable in the tech marketplace. If you work hard and are proactive about taking charge of your career progression, I strongly believe there are so many incredible opportunities out there, both in terms of your own career, but also in terms of having an impact on helping to uplift other women. So understand and own your value and never settle for less. Thank you. So if you want to see the full State of the Dev Nation report, you can scan the link using this QR code or just look for it on our website. And I think I now want to open the floor to some questions, if there are any. Well, if there are no immediate questions, but if you think of something later, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on my email, which is just my name, talia@offerzen.com. And yeah, don't forget to scan this QR code to collect some epic swag from our company. You can see I'm wearing my own Get Fetch Dragons. I don't know if you can actually let me that. There we go. Pretty cool. Thank you so much, though.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you so much, Talia. Very insightful as well. I think from my side, I've got a question for you, Talia. So, what kind of data science jobs are in the market? Are there any jobs in the computer vision industry, like like object detection? Because from my understanding, when I look at jobs on LinkedIn, I don't see a lot of computer vision engineering jobs. So, well, from OfferZen side, are there any computer vision opportunities?
So, for the sake of transparency, in terms of the marketplace, something that I've definitely observed is that we're not yet caught up in terms of data science, in terms of the demand for data science. So there is demand out there, but
Yes.
it hasn't boomed in the way that we have kind of been anticipating and talking about.
Yes.
And this kind of lack of catching on with the trend is kind of
That's true.
evidenced within our marketplace.
Yes.
So we do definitely place data scientists, and there are roles available. But in terms of the specifics,
Yes.
it's not super clear at this point. So I wish I could give you clearer insight
No,
into it, but
no,
I think it's
that's fine. That
cool.
it puts things into perspective. I think
I
there's a
mean,
question for you in
yep,
the chat.
cool.
It says, hi, Talia. Thank you for sharing the valuable information. You mentioned you studied psychology. Can I ask what career path or courses did you take to enable you to get started in the tech industry? That's Mbali.
Awesome. That's a great question. So I think it's important to note that I don't actually code or develop myself. I'm more working in like the people HR kind of space in terms of my own skill set. But what I did was just I did an honors degree in organizational psychology. And while we weren't specifically learning about the tech industry, it was very much about trying to think about how you manage people in like an innovative way and contextualizing that within the context of globalization and rapid technological progression and the fourth industrial revolution. So I think that's pretty much my background, but I saw a link to apply to OfferZen, and I looked at the company and I thought, my skills are pretty global. You can manage people anywhere, and what better or more relevant industry to do so than within the tech industry? So that's kind of how I found my way to working in the tech space. And I think it's important to note that there are so many different avenues. Like my colleague Lydia, she actually started out as a talent advisor and then realized that she was super keen to actually be part of designing the product. And so in her own time, she did her own courses and she became super proficient at UI design. And she's now really happy working in her role as a UI designer for our own platform. So there's no one prescriptive pathway, I would say. It's just about kind of assessing and reflecting on your own skill set and being really intentional about taking opportunities that come your way and seeking out opportunities as well.
Solid. Good advice. Bali, I hope Talia answer your question? Okay, cool. Any other questions, Talia?
I can add to that. Thank you, Talia, for this great, insightful presentation. And I just wanted to ask on when we were talking about frameworks, from the difference between ASP.NET and JavaScript. So I would, like to ask, for advice for people who are starting out and optimizing, the real frameworks that actually, are popular, are community driven and open source. So, between ASP.NET and JavaScript, how would you, advise someone who wants to take a path in coding and, yeah. Yeah. Even starting out, just a good advice because you are really making great strides at OfferZen. And I believe, young ladies out there and other people as well, will be interested in how do you see this in your perspective.
Yes.
That's a really tough question. And again, I do just want to emphasize, because I don't want to go dispensing career advice on stuff that I haven't actually experienced firsthand.
Okay.
So
True.
I've never worked with these languages or frameworks.
Okay.
But intuitively, my understanding is that like .NET, the Microsoft .NET stack, it's kind of well established and it works and it's effective, because of how universal Microsoft is, and it's evergreen. And when we say that, that's very powerful. It means that we don't foresee it ever really going out of fashion. And so it's a super solid tech stack to kind of have a foundation in, and to set you up to always be employable. So from that perspective, it's excellent. But with regards to JavaScript, I think the difference is that it's sort of less. It's popular and we know that it's working really well, but it's sort of a burgeoning tech stack. And I know from chatting to candidates that it's something that they really, really enjoy working with, and they find it incredibly easy to use and kind of malleable. So I don't know that I would actually say that one is better than the other. I think the most important thing, especially for young developers, is to try to get exposure to both, or whatever technologies you're kind of playing around with. If you're undecided, try and get exposure to both and figure out what your skill set and your interests and your kind of longer term goals, what resonates with you, or try learn them all.
That's true. Thank you, Talia. Wonderful advice.
Awesome.
Thank you to all the attendees as well. We're going to break the session now for lunch, and so people can get on with their Sunday activities. We will be back at 2 p.m. for the live coding session. That's going to be a 3-hour coding session where we're going to go through robotic applications. So this is going to be a deep dive into artificial intelligence and also deploying the solution. So we're going to leave you with this video from Intel, just to get the fire started for the next session on how to deploy IoT solutions at the edge. Thank you so much for everybody. And the link will also still be open even after 12 p.m. till 2 p.m. Then we will start with the second session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo, Tabo.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Level.
When you set out to succeed at the edge, one question persists. How do I get this done? At Intel, we know how. That's why after tens of thousands of deployments and counting, we can ask a new question. What do you want to do? Do you want to utilize deep learning inference to help radiologists identify issues faster and more accurately? Or maybe you want to optimize customer experience with a repeatable platform that can also work here, here, and here. Do you want to offer network performance and scalability while managing costs? Or even achieve precision that boosts weld inspections 100 times over? Do you want to win
by making dated systems smarter with easier integration tools. Become the first to build a fully virtualized mobile network in the cloud, and even act faster on data at its source to help save our coral reefs. Do you want to make your ideas real? So do we. With tens of thousands of deployments across the globe, we've become trusted experts at streamlining, simplifying, and making the edge affordable. So all you need is an idea and Intel inside to take that wonderful thing you want to do and get it done. Intel, do something wonderful.